The rain hammered against the windows of the Pentagon briefing room as Admiral Jack Morrison shuffled through classified files. 25 years as a Navy SEAL had taught him to read people like maps, but the woman sitting across from him was a complete mystery. She wore a simple black suit, no military decorations, no name tag. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her green eyes held secrets he couldn't crack. "So, who exactly are you?" Morrison asked with his trademark cocky grin. He'd earned the right to be arrogant after leading successful missions in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Somalia. His chest full of medals proved he was America's finest warrior. This mysterious woman looked like she belonged in an office building, not a top-secret military meeting. The woman sat perfectly still, her hands folded on the mahogany table. She didn't smile back. She didn't even blink. The silence stretched between them like a loaded gun. Morrison's confidence began to crack just a little. He was used to intimidating people with his reputation and his steely gaze, but this woman seemed completely unimpressed. "I asked you a question," Morrison pressed, leaning forward in his chair. "This is a classified briefing about Operation Stormfront. I need to know who I'm working with." His voice carried the authority of someone who was used to getting answers immediately. Subordinates jumped when he spoke. Enemy combatants feared his name. But this woman just sat there like a statue. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was calm and measured, with just a hint of steel underneath. "Fleet Commander." 2 words. That was all she said. Then she opened her own file folder and began reading as if Morrison wasn't even there. Morrison's mouth dropped open. Fleet Commander? That was impossible. There were only a handful of fleet commanders in the entire United States Navy, and he knew every single one of them personally. They were all men. They were all his age or older. They all had decades of combat experience and sea time. This woman looked like she was barely 30 years old. "That's not possible," Morrison said, his voice rising slightly. "I know every fleet commander in the Navy. You're not one of them." He stood up from his chair, his 6'3" frame towering over the table. "I don't know what game you're playing, but I don't appreciate being lied to." The woman looked up from her file for the first time since she'd spoken. Her green eyes met his brown ones without a trace of fear or uncertainty. "Sit down, Admiral Morrison," she said quietly. "We have work to do." Something in her voice made him pause. It wasn't a request. It was an order. And somehow, without understanding why, Morrison found himself sitting back down. His mind raced as he tried to process what was happening. Who was this woman? How did she know his name when he hadn't introduced himself? And why did he suddenly feel like he was the junior officer in this room? The woman reached into her briefcase and pulled out a thick manila envelope marked with red tape and multiple classification stamps. Morrison recognized the highest levels of security clearance when he saw them. Whatever was in that envelope was way above his pay grade. And his pay grade was already pretty high. "Operation Stormfront has been compromised," she said, sliding the envelope across the table to him. "We have 48 hours to completely restructure the mission parameters, or we're going to lose a lot of good people." Her words hit him like a punch to the gut. Operation Stormfront was his operation. He'd been planning it for 6 months. Morrison's hands shook slightly as he opened the envelope. Inside were photographs, intelligence reports, and communication intercepts that made his blood run cold. The enemy knew everything. Every detail of his carefully planned mission had been leaked to hostile forces. His men would be walking into a death trap. "How is this possible?" Morrison whispered, staring at the evidence spread before him. "Only a handful of people knew about Stormfront. We used secure channels for everything." His mind immediately went to his team. These were men he'd served with for years, men who'd saved his life more than once. The thought that one of them might be a traitor was almost too painful to consider. The woman watched him process the information with something that might have been sympathy. "That's what we're here to figure out, Admiral. The leak came from inside your inner circle. Someone very close to you has been feeding information to the enemy for months." She paused to let that sink in. "Someone you trust completely." Morrison felt the world tilt underneath him. His inner circle consisted of 5 men. His best friend and second-in-command, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Hayes, his intelligence officer, Major Pete Williams, his communications specialist, Sergeant First Class Maria Santos, his demolitions expert, Chief Petty Officer Tom Anderson, and his sniper, Staff Sergeant Mike Johnson. These people weren't just his team, they were his family. "I need to see your credentials," Morrison said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "I need to know who you really are before I can trust you with this information." He was grasping for some sense of control in a situation that had spun completely out of his hands. The woman nodded as if she'd been expecting this request. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a leather wallet. She flipped it open and slid it across the table to Morrison. His eyes widened as he read the identification card inside. The name on the card was Commander Elena Vasquez. But it was the title underneath that made Morrison's heart skip a beat. Fleet Commander. Special Operations Division. A division so classified that Morrison had only heard rumors about its existence. A division that reported directly to the Joint Chiefs of Staff and had authority that superseded every other military command structure. Morrison looked up at Commander Vasquez with new respect and more than a little fear. "How long have you been watching my operation?" he asked quietly. 6 months, she replied. "Ever since we first detected the security breach." Morrison's coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he couldn't bring himself to care. Commander Vasquez had spread dozens of surveillance photos across the briefing table, each one showing members of his team in compromising situations. His hands trembled as he picked up a photo of Lieutenant Commander Hayes meeting with an unidentified man in a downtown cafe. "Sarah's been my second-in-command for 8 years, Morrison said, his voice barely above a whisper. "She saved my life in Kandahar, took shrapnel in her shoulder pulling me out of a burning building." He set the photo down carefully, as if it might explode. "There has to be another explanation." Commander Vasquez pulled out her laptop and turned the screen toward Morrison. Security footage began playing, showing Hayes passing a manila envelope to the same unidentified man. The timestamp showed it was recorded just 3 days ago. Morrison felt sick to his stomach. "The man she's meeting is Colonel Dmitry Petrov," Vasquez explained. "Former Spetsnaz, now working for a private military contractor with ties to hostile foreign governments. He's been paying Lieutenant Commander Hayes $50,000 for each intelligence package she delivers." Morrison slammed his fist on the table, making the coffee cups jump. "I don't believe it. Sarah doesn't need money. Her family is wealthy. Her father owns half of Boston's waterfront." But even as he protested, doubt began creeping into his mind. Hayes had been asking a lot of detailed questions about Stormfront lately, questions that seemed innocent at the time but now felt suspicious. Vasquez clicked to another video file. This one showed Hayes accessing Morrison's personal computer late at night in his office. She used his password to download files onto a thumb drive. Morrison watched in horror as his most trusted friend betrayed everything they'd built together. "How did you get footage from inside my office?" Morrison demanded. "That's supposed to be a secure facility." His mind raced as he realized the implications. If Vasquez's people could spy on him that easily, who else might be watching? "We've been monitoring all personnel connected to Operation Stormfront," Vasquez replied matter-of-factly. "When we detected the initial security breach, we had to assume everyone was a potential suspect. That included you, Admiral Morrison." The words hit him like a physical blow. "You suspected me? Of betraying my own country? My own men?" Morrison's face flushed red with anger and humiliation. His entire career had been built on loyalty and honor. The idea that anyone could question his patriotism was almost unbearable. Vasquez's expression softened slightly. "We had to consider every possibility. But your psychological profile and financial records cleared you within the first month. You're clean, Admiral. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for Lieutenant Commander Hayes." Morrison stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the gray Washington sky. Rain continued to streak down the glass, distorting his view of the world outside. Everything he thought he knew was crumbling around him. "How long has she been selling us out?" he asked, without turning around. "Our investigation suggests she was first approached 18 months ago," Vasquez said, consulting her files. Colonel Petrov targeted her specifically because of her access to you and her knowledge of special operations planning. They played a long game, building trust and gradually increasing her involvement. Morrison turned back to face Vasquez, his jaw set with determination. What's the plan? Do we arrest her? Confront her? Use her to feed false information back to Petrov? His military training kicked in, pushing aside personal feelings in favor of tactical thinking. None of those options, Vasquez replied. Hayes doesn't know we've discovered her betrayal. As far as she's concerned, Operation Stormfront is proceeding as planned. That gives us a unique opportunity to turn this situation to our advantage. She opened another file and pulled out a new set of documents. We're going to let her steal the final operational details for Stormfront. But the information she steals will be completely false. While she's feeding fake intelligence to Petrov and his handlers, we'll execute the real mission using a completely different approach. Morrison felt a spark of hope for the first time since entering the briefing room. A counterintelligence operation. Let them think they know what we're planning while we hit them from an unexpected direction. He began pacing the room, his tactical mind working through the possibilities. But that means my team will have to be kept in the dark too. They can't know about the real mission. Exactly, Vasquez confirmed. Only you and I will know the true operational parameters. Your team will prepare for the fake mission, believing it's real. Hayes will steal that information and pass it along to the enemy. Meanwhile, you and I will be planning the actual assault. Morrison stopped pacing and looked directly at Vasquez. You said, you and I. Does that mean you're coming along on the mission? The idea of working directly with a fleet commander was both thrilling and terrifying. These people operated at levels of classification he'd never dreamed of. I'll be leading the mission, Vasquez corrected him. This operation has been escalated far beyond the scope of Stormfront. We now have evidence of a larger network of compromised personnel throughout the military. Hayes is just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. Morrison's head spun as he tried to process the implications. How big is this conspiracy? How many people are involved? His voice cracked slightly as he imagined the scope of betrayal they might be dealing with. Vasquez's expression grew even more serious. We've identified at least 12 military personnel, across different branches, who are selling classified information. The money trail leads back to the same source that's been paying Hayes. Someone is systematically compromising our national security at the highest levels. Morrison sank back into his chair, feeling overwhelmed. 12 people. Jesus. How did this happen? How did we miss it? His confidence in the entire military system was shaking. If they couldn't trust their own people, how could they protect the country? It happened because they were smart about it, Vasquez explained. They targeted people with financial pressures, relationship problems, or career disappointments. They didn't approach them as enemy agents. They presented themselves as private contractors offering legitimate consulting opportunities. She pulled out a photograph of a distinguished-looking man in an expensive suit. Meet Alexander Kozlov. Russian-born American citizen. Clean background check, successful businessman. On paper, he runs a legitimate defense consulting firm. In reality, he's the mastermind behind this entire operation. Morrison studied the photograph carefully, memorizing every detail of Kozlov's face. And you think he's the one ultimately behind Hayes's recruitment? The pieces were starting to come together, but the picture they formed was terrifying. We know he is, Vasquez replied grimly. We've traced the money, monitored the communications, and documented the meetings. Kozlov has been building this network for over 3 years. Operation Stormfront was supposed to be his biggest score yet. Morrison felt a cold anger building in his chest. Then let's make sure he gets exactly what he deserves. 3 days later, Morrison sat in his office trying to act normal while his world fell apart. Lieutenant Commander Hayes knocked on his door at exactly 0800 hours, just like she had every morning for the past 8 years. Her smile was warm and genuine as she entered with 2 cups of coffee and the daily briefing folder. "Morning, Jack," she said, using the informal address they'd adopted after years of friendship. Intel reports came in overnight. The target location has been confirmed, and weather conditions look favorable for storm front. She handed him his coffee and settled into the chair across from his desk. Morrison forced himself to smile back, even though every instinct screamed that he was looking at a traitor. "Thanks, Sarah. Any changes to our timeline?" His voice sounded normal, but his hands shook slightly as he reached for the coffee cup. He hoped she didn't notice. Hayes opened the briefing folder and spread out satellite photos and reconnaissance reports. "Everything's on schedule. The team's excited about this one. Williams thinks it'll be our smoothest operation yet." Her enthusiasm seemed completely genuine, which made Morrison's stomach turn. How could someone betray their team while looking so innocent? "That's good to hear," Morrison replied, studying the fake operational plans that Vasquez had prepared. According to these documents, Storm Front would be a straightforward assault on a terrorist training camp in the mountains of Afghanistan. The real mission was something entirely different, but Hayes would never know that. Hayes leaned forward, pointing to a specific location on the satellite image. "I've been thinking about our extraction route. The terrain here looks challenging, but if we modify our approach slightly, we could cut 15 minutes off our exit time." Her tactical suggestions were sound, which made Morrison realize how much he was going to miss working with her. "Sounds reasonable," Morrison said, making notes on the fake plans. "Why don't you run it by the rest of the team and see what they think?" He watched her face carefully, looking for any sign that she knew these plans were false. Her expression remained focused and professional. As Hayes gathered the documents to leave, Morrison felt compelled to say something. "Sarah, I want you to know how much I've appreciated working with you all these years. You're one of the finest officers I've ever served with." His words were true, despite her betrayal. That was what made this situation so painful. Hayes looked surprised by the unexpected sentiment. "That means a lot coming from you, Jack. We make a good team." She paused at the door. "Are you feeling all right? You seem a little off today." Morrison's heart raced, but he kept his expression neutral. "Just tired. This mission has me thinking about retirement. Maybe it's time to step back and let younger officers take the lead." The irony of his words wasn't lost on him. This might indeed be his last mission, depending on how badly the Hayes situation damaged his career. After Hayes left, Morrison immediately called Vasquez on the secure line. She took the bait. The fake plans are now in her possession. His voice was heavy with sadness and anger. "How soon before she passes them along to Petrov?" "Our surveillance suggests she'll make contact within the next 6 hours, Vasquez replied. "She typically meets with Petrov every Tuesday and Friday at different locations around the city. Today is Friday, so we should have confirmation by this evening." Morrison walked to his window and stared out at the military personnel going about their daily routines. "What happens to my team after this is over? They're going to find out that their second-in-command was a traitor. That's going to mess with their heads pretty badly." Vasquez's voice softened slightly. "We'll provide counseling and support for everyone affected. Betrayal by a trusted team member is one of the most difficult things military personnel can experience. But your team is strong, Admiral. They'll recover from this." "Will I recover from this?" Morrison asked quietly. "Sarah and I have been through hell together. We've saved each other's lives more times than I can count. How do I reconcile that with what she's done?" There was a long pause before Vasquez answered. "I've been in this business for 15 years, Admiral. I've seen good people make terrible choices for all kinds of reasons. It doesn't erase the good things they did before, but it also doesn't excuse the harm they've caused." Morrison nodded, even though she couldn't see him. "What's our timeline for the real mission? When do we move?" He needed to focus on something other than his personal feelings. Action was the only thing that might help him deal with this betrayal. "Tomorrow night," Vasquez replied. "While Petrov and his team are preparing to counter the fake storm front operation, we'll be hitting their real target. A weapons manufacturing facility hidden in an industrial complex outside Ankara, Turkey." Morrison's eyebrows shot up. "Turkey? That's nowhere near Afghanistan. What kind of weapons are we talking about?" This was the first time he'd heard any details about the actual mission they'd be conducting. Chemical weapons, Vasquez said grimly. Kozlov's network isn't just selling information. They're also facilitating the production and distribution of illegal weapons to terrorist organizations. This facility has been producing enough chemical agents to devastate major population centers. Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. Chemical weapons were every military officer's nightmare scenario. The thought that Hayes's betrayal might have helped terrorists acquire such weapons made him feel physically sick. How many people are we talking about? What's the scope of this facility? Intelligence suggests a workforce of approximately 200 people, with security provided by former military personnel from various countries. It's essentially a small army protecting a weapons factory. Vasquez paused. This won't be an easy mission, Admiral. We're going in with a small team against overwhelming odds. Morrison's training kicked in, pushing aside personal emotions in favor of tactical planning. What kind of support do we have? Air cover? Extraction assets? Medical backup? These were the details that would determine whether they lived or died. Minimal support, Vasquez admitted. This operation is so classified that we can't involve traditional military assets. We'll have a small team of special operations personnel, but we'll be largely on our own once we're on the ground. Morrison felt a familiar surge of adrenaline. This was the kind of impossible mission he'd built his reputation on. How small is small? Are we talking about a dozen people? 2 dozen? He was already mentally calculating how they might assault a heavily defended facility with limited resources. 8 people total, Vasquez replied, including you and me. 6 other operators who have been specially cleared for this level of classified work. Morrison nearly dropped the phone. 8 people against 200? Plus whatever security measures they have in place? That's not a mission, that's a suicide run. His mind raced as he tried to figure out how such a small force could possibly succeed. It's not about overwhelming force, Vasquez explained. It's about precision and timing. We're not going to fight our way through 200 defenders. We're going to eliminate the chemical weapons without them knowing we were ever there. Morrison began to understand. This wasn't a traditional military assault. This was a covert operation requiring surgical precision and perfect execution. A stealth mission. Get in, destroy the weapons, get out. No witnesses, no evidence, no international incident. Exactly, Vasquez confirmed. While Petrov and his team are mobilizing to defend against the fake attack in Afghanistan, we'll be halfway around the world eliminating the real threat. By the time they realize they've been deceived, the chemical weapons will be nothing but radioactive ash. Morrison smiled for the first time in days. When do I meet the rest of the team? The abandoned warehouse outside Baltimore looked like any other industrial building. But Morrison knew better. As he walked through the unmarked entrance, multiple layers of security scanned him with technology he couldn't identify. Vasquez met him in what appeared to be a storage room, but was actually a sophisticated briefing facility hidden behind false walls. "Welcome to our real headquarters," she said, leading him through a concealed door into a high-tech command center. Banks of monitors displayed satellite feeds, communications intercepts, and real-time intelligence from around the globe. Morrison had never seen anything like it. Even in his years of top-secret operations, 5 operators stood around a central table studying blueprints and tactical plans. Morrison recognized their type immediately. Elite soldiers from different military branches who'd been selected for the most dangerous missions. They looked up as Vasquez entered with Morrison, their expressions revealing nothing but professional interest. "Team, meet Admiral Morrison," Vasquez announced. "He'll be our tactical commander for tomorrow night's operation." She gestured to each operator in turn. "Captain Rodriguez, Marine Force Reconnaissance. Lieutenant Commander Kim, Navy Explosive Ordnance Disposal. Major Thompson, Air Force Pararescue. Sergeant First Class Jackson, Army Rangers, and Chief Warrant Officer Chen, Coast Guard Tactical Law Enforcement." Morrison shook hands with each team member, impressed by the diversity of skills represented. These weren't just elite soldiers. They were specialists chosen for their unique abilities. "Interesting mix of talents," he observed. "I'm guessing each of you brings something specific to this mission." Captain Rodriguez, a compact woman with steel in her eyes, spoke first. I'll be handling perimeter security and counter surveillance. My job is to make sure we get in and out without being detected by external security forces. Her Boston accent was barely detectable, but Morrison caught the confidence in her voice. Lieutenant Commander Kim stepped forward next. I'm responsible for neutralizing the chemical weapons safely. We can't just blow them up without risking contamination of the surrounding area. His Korean heritage was evident in his features, but his English was flawless. The compounds we're dealing with require precise disposal methods. Major Thompson, a tall African-American man with the calm demeanor of someone who'd survived countless dangerous situations, nodded toward Morrison. Medical and extraction specialist. If anyone gets hurt, I keep them alive. If everything goes wrong, I get us out. His matter-of-fact tone suggested he'd done both many times before. Sergeant First Class Jackson looked young enough to be Morrison's son, but his reputation preceded him. Communications and electronic warfare. I'll be jamming their security systems and maintaining contact with our support assets. Despite his youth, his eyes held the steady gaze of a veteran warrior. Chief Warrant Officer Chen surprised Morrison the most. She appeared to be in her 40s, older than the others, with graying hair and laugh lines around her eyes. Intelligence and interrogation specialist. If we need information from captured personnel, I'll get it. If we need to blend in with local populations, I handle that too. Morrison studied the team carefully, his tactical mind already working through how their skills would integrate. This isn't a typical special operations team. You're more like a specialized task force designed for a very specific type of mission. Exactly right, Vasquez confirmed. We don't do traditional military operations. We handle situations that require absolute deniability and perfect execution. Failure isn't just unacceptable, it's catastrophic. She activated a large wall display, showing detailed satellite imagery of the target facility. The industrial complex sprawled across several acres, with multiple buildings connected by covered walkways. Security towers were positioned at regular intervals around the perimeter, and Morrison could see armed patrols moving between structures. The chemical weapons are stored in this building, Vasquez said, highlighting a structure near the center of the complex. Intelligence suggests they have enough chemical agents to contaminate the water supply of a major city. We have one shot to eliminate this threat before they move the weapons to their final destination. Lieutenant Commander Kim pointed to specific areas on the blueprint. The storage facility has multiple containment systems designed to prevent accidents. Unfortunately, those same systems will make it challenging for us to destroy the weapons quickly. We'll need at least 30 minutes once we're inside. Morrison frowned at the timeline. 30 minutes is a long time to remain undetected in a hostile facility. What kind of diversion do we have planned? 4. His experience told him that any operation requiring that much time needed significant support. That's where the Hayes situation becomes an asset, Vasquez explained. Tomorrow night, while we're hitting the real target, Petrov's team will be responding to the fake storm front operation in Afghanistan. Most of their security personnel will be either deployed or on high alert for the wrong threat. Captain Rodriguez spread out additional reconnaissance photos. Our surveillance shows that normal security consists of 40 guards working in rotating shifts. Tomorrow night, that number will drop to approximately 15, because they're sending personnel to counter our fake operation. Morrison nodded approvingly. 15 guards is much more manageable than 40, but it still leaves us outnumbered 2-1, and they'll be fighting on their home ground. He studied the facility layout, looking for advantages they could exploit. Major Thompson traced possible infiltration routes on the blueprint. We insert here via helicopter at 2,300 hours. The landing zone is 2 kilometers from the target, giving us a 15-minute approach on foot through this forested area. He pointed to green terrain surrounding the industrial complex. Weather forecast is perfect, Sergeant Jackson added, consulting his tablet. New moon, cloud cover at 60%. Light winds from the southeast. Visibility will be minimal, which works in our favor. Chief Chen pulled up additional intelligence files. Personnel analysis indicates that most of the remaining guards will be concentrated around the administrative buildings and main entrance. The chemical storage facility has lighter security because they assume the perimeter defenses are sufficient. Morrison felt the familiar pre-mission excitement building in his chest. This was what he lived for. Impossible odds, critical stakes, and a team of professionals who knew their jobs. What about our extraction? How do we get out once the facility is destroyed? Vasquez activated another display showing maritime charts. Extraction is via fast boat from the coast, approximately 5 kilometers southeast of the target. We'll have a 12-minute window to reach the pickup point after the mission is complete. Morrison calculated the timing in his head. So we need to infiltrate, destroy the weapons, and cover 5 kilometers to the coast in less than an hour total. That's cutting it pretty close. It gets tighter, Vasquez admitted. Once Kim triggers the destruction sequence, we'll have exactly 47 minutes before the chemical disposal process creates a detectable signature that satellite monitoring will pick up. If we're not clear of Turkish airspace by then, this becomes an international incident. Morrison looked around at the team, seeing the same grim determination in their faces that he felt in his chest. Any questions about the mission parameters? He asked. Once we're on the ground, there won't be time for clarification. Captain Rodriguez raised her hand slightly. What's our protocol if we encounter unexpected resistance? Do we abort, adapt, or push through regardless of casualties? Morrison exchanged glances with Vasquez before answering. The chemical weapons represent a clear and present danger to civilian populations. We complete the mission unless it becomes physically impossible to do so. His words carried the weight of absolute commitment. Lieutenant Commander Kim nodded grimly. Understood. The weapons get destroyed no matter what. Chief Chen smiled slightly, but her eyes remained cold. Good. I was hoping this wasn't going to be one of those missions where we pretend failure is an option. Morrison felt a surge of pride in this team he'd just met. These were warriors who understood what was at stake. Then let's go save some lives. The helicopter's engines whispered through the Turkish night as Morrison checked his equipment for the third time. His tactical vest held enough ammunition for a small war, but he hoped they wouldn't need to fire a single shot. Stealth was their greatest weapon tonight. And once the shooting started, their chances of success would plummet dramatically. Vasquez sat across from him, her face painted with black camouflage that made her green eyes seem to glow in the red interior lighting. She looked completely different from the mysterious woman who'd walked into his Pentagon briefing room just days ago. This was Fleet Commander Vasquez in her element. Deadly, focused, and absolutely in control. 2 minutes to insertion, the pilot announced through their headsets. Morrison felt the familiar pre-combat calm settling over him. His heartbeat slowed, his breathing deepened, and his senses sharpened. 25 years of dangerous missions had taught him to find peace in the moments before violence. Lieutenant Commander Kim was running through his equipment checklist one final time. The chemical disposal devices he carried looked like ordinary backpack explosives, but Morrison knew they contained sophisticated technology capable of neutralizing the most dangerous compounds known to mankind. Disposal charges are armed and ready, Kim reported quietly. Captain Rodriguez peered through night vision goggles at the terrain below. Target facility is visible. Security lighting is minimal, and I count 3 patrol vehicles making standard circuits around the perimeter. Her voice carried the professional detachment of someone who'd infiltrated dozens of hostile installations. 1 minute out, the pilot announced. Morrison could feel the helicopter beginning its descent toward the landing zone. Through his window, he saw the dark outline of the industrial complex in the distance, its few lights twinkling like deadly stars. Vasquez activated her tactical radio and spoke in code to their support team. Overlook Base, this is Ranger 6. Package delivery commencing on schedule. Confirm backup assets are in position. Her words were calm and professional, giving no hint of the danger they were flying into. Overlook Base confirms all assets ready, came the reply. Weather remains favorable, and surveillance shows no unexpected activity at target location. You are cleared for delivery. 18 ride. 18 ride. The helicopter touched down in a small clearing surrounded by dense forest. Morrison was the first out, his rifle ready as he scanned for threats. The rest of the team followed in perfect silence, each operator taking a predetermined position to secure the landing zone. Within 30 seconds, the helicopter was airborne again, leaving them alone in the Turkish wilderness. Morrison checked his GPS coordinates and compass bearing. 2 kilometers northeast to target. Standard patrol formation. Maintain radio silence unless contact is unavoidable. His whispered words were barely audible, even to the team members standing next to him. They moved through the forest like ghosts, their years of training evident in every silent footstep. Major Thompson took point, his pararescue training making him expert at navigation through hostile terrain. Sergeant Jackson monitored electronic communications, while Chief Chen watched for signs of human activity. After 15 minutes of careful movement, Captain Rodriguez raised her hand to signal a halt. Through hand signals, she indicated movement ahead. 2 guards on foot patrol, walking along a fence line that marked the facility's outer perimeter. Morrison counted the timing of their circuit, noting that they passed each checkpoint every 8 minutes. Vasquez checked her watch and made quick calculations. They had a 4-minute window to cross the fence line and reach the main facility before the next patrol arrived. Morrison nodded his understanding and signaled the team to prepare for rapid movement. Lieutenant Commander Kim produced wire cutters and quickly created an opening in the chain-link fence. The team slipped through one by one, with Morrison and Vasquez covering their movement. Captain Rodriguez was last through, carefully repositioning the cut fence to hide evidence of their entry. The industrial complex loomed ahead of them, its concrete buildings casting deep shadows in the minimal security lighting. Morrison could see 2 guards stationed at the main entrance, but the chemical storage facility appeared to have only automated security sensors. They would need to disable those sensors without triggering any alarms. Sergeant Jackson activated his electronic warfare equipment and began analyzing the security system's radio frequencies. After 2 minutes of careful work, he gave Morrison a thumbs-up signal. The sensors were jammed, creating a small window of invisibility around their target building. Morrison led the team across 50 meters of open ground to reach the storage facility. Their black clothing made them nearly invisible against the dark concrete walls, but he knew they were exposed to any guard who might be looking in the right direction at the wrong moment. The entrance to the chemical storage building was secured with both electronic locks and mechanical barriers. Chief Chen produced specialized tools and began working on the systems, while the rest of the team maintained security. Morrison counted the seconds, knowing that every moment they spent exposed increased their chances of detection. After what felt like hours but was actually only 90 seconds, Chen signaled success. The door opened silently, revealing a dimly lit corridor lined with warning signs in multiple languages. The symbols for chemical hazards, biological contamination, and radiation dangers covered every surface. Morrison's stomach tightened as he realized the scope of the weapons stored in this facility. This wasn't just chemical agents. They were dealing with a complete arsenal of weapons of mass destruction. The consequences of failure had just become infinitely worse. Lieutenant Commander Kim activated his detection equipment and immediately began reading dangerous levels of multiple toxic compounds. "We've got chemical weapons, biological agents, and radiological materials," he whispered into his radio. "This place is a doomsday factory." Vasquez's expression hardened as she processed this information. "Change of mission parameters," she whispered into her radio. "We're not just stopping a chemical weapons operation. We're preventing a global catastrophe." The weight of their responsibility settled on Morrison's shoulders like a lead blanket. Kim led them deeper into the facility, his detection equipment guiding them toward the most concentrated storage areas. The corridors were lined with reinforced doors, each one marked with codes that indicated the deadly contents within. Morrison had seen chemical weapons before, but never in quantities like this. They reached a central chamber that made Morrison's blood run cold. Rows of metal containers stretched from floor to ceiling, each one labeled with technical specifications that Kim quietly translated. "Enough VX nerve agent to kill 1 million people." Weaponized anthrax spores. And something I don't recognize, but the radiation signature suggests it's designed to make areas uninhabitable for decades. Captain Rodriguez maintained watch at the entrance, while the rest of the team spread out to plant Kim's specialized disposal charges. Each device had to be positioned precisely to ensure complete destruction without creating a contamination hazard for the surrounding area. 15 minutes remaining until patrol check, Rodriguez reported quietly. Morrison felt sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool air. They were cutting it dangerously close, and they still had to reach their extraction point 5 kilometers away. Kim worked methodically, his hands steady despite the pressure. Disposal sequence will take 7 minutes once activated. The chemical reaction will neutralize all biological and chemical agents, while the radiological materials will be contained and rendered inert. His technical explanation was reassuring, but Morrison knew that any mistake would kill them all. Suddenly, Sergeant Jackson's voice crackled through their earpieces. Multiple vehicles approaching the facility. Looks like they moved up their patrol schedule. Morrison felt his heart rate spike as he realized their window of opportunity was closing faster than planned. How long until they reach our position? Vasquez asked, her voice calm despite the deteriorating situation. 3 minutes, maybe 4 if they stop to check the perimeter, Jackson replied. But after that, this place is going to be crawling with guards. Morrison made the decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Kim, start the disposal sequence now. Everyone else, prepare for immediate extraction. He knew they were cutting the timing dangerously close, but the weapons had to be destroyed. Kim's fingers flew over his equipment as he initiated the final destruction sequence. 7 minutes from now, he announced quietly. Once this starts, we can't stop it. Everything in this facility will be destroyed. The team moved with practiced efficiency toward the exit, but Morrison could already hear vehicles arriving outside. Through a window, he saw armed guards deploying around the building. Their stealth insertion had somehow been compromised, and now they were trapped inside with a countdown timer ticking toward destruction. Overlook base. This is Ranger 6. Vasquez spoke into her radio. Package delivery initiated. But we have unexpected company. Request immediate extraction support. Her words carried an urgency that made Morrison realize how desperate their situation had become. Negative on extraction support, came the reply. You are beyond the range of our assets. You're on your own until you reach the coast. The words hit the team like a physical blow. They were trapped in a hostile facility with no backup and a 7-minute deadline. Morrison gathered the team in the central chamber, his mind racing through their limited options. We have 2 choices. Fight our way out and hope we can reach the extraction point in time, or find a place to hide until the disposal sequence is complete. Chief Chen pointed to a reinforced storage room near the back of the facility. That room is designed to contain chemical leaks. If we seal ourselves inside, we might survive the destruction sequence. Her suggestion was logical, but Morrison knew it was essentially a suicide plan. The disposal process will create temperatures over 2,000 degrees, Kim warned. Even in a containment room, our survival chances are minimal. His words confirmed Morrison's worst fears. They were facing a choice between certain death and almost certain death. Captain Rodriguez checked her watch grimly. 5 minutes until disposal completion. Guards are surrounding the building. We need to make a decision now. The sound of boots on concrete was getting closer, and Morrison could hear voices shouting in Turkish and Russian. Morrison looked at each team member, seeing the same grim determination in their faces that had carried them through the mission so far. These were warriors who understood sacrifice, and they all knew what was at stake. The weapons get destroyed, he said quietly. That's our primary mission. Everything else is secondary. Vasquez nodded approvingly. Agreed. We complete the mission no matter what. Her words carried the authority of command and the weight of absolute commitment. The sound of the facility's main door being forced open echoed through the corridors. Guards were inside the building, and in less than 4 minutes, everything would be consumed in a chemical fire that would burn hot enough to melt steel. Morrison's tactical mind shifted into overdrive as he heard boots pounding through the corridors toward their position. 3 minutes until the disposal sequence would turn the entire facility into a furnace, and armed guards were closing in from multiple directions. The mathematics of survival looked impossible. But he'd beaten impossible odds before. "Chen, how many guards can you hear?" Morrison whispered, pressing his back against the reinforced door of the storage chamber. His rifle was ready, but he knew that once the shooting started, stealth would be replaced by a running gun battle they couldn't win. Chief Chen closed her eyes and listened intently to the approaching footsteps. At least 8, possibly 12. They're moving in standard search patterns, checking each room systematically. Her voice carried the calm professionalism of someone who'd been in similar situations before. Vasquez checked the facility blueprint on her tablet, looking for any escape route they might have missed. "There's a maintenance tunnel that leads to the outer perimeter. If we can reach it without detection, we might make it to the extraction point in time." Her finger traced a path through the building that looked impossibly dangerous. Lieutenant Commander Kim monitored his disposal equipment grimly. 2 minutes 30 seconds until activation. Once the process begins, the thermal output will make the building uninhabitable within 90 seconds. His technical expertise painted a clear picture. They had almost no time left. Morrison made the decision that separated leaders from followers. "Rodriguez, take point toward the maintenance tunnel. Jackson, jam their communications so they can't coordinate. Thompson, cover our rear. Chen and Kim, stay with Vasquez and me." His orders were crisp and clear. Cutting through the chaos of their desperate situation, Captain Rodriguez moved like a shadow toward the corridor leading to the maintenance access. Her marine training showed in every silent step as she navigated around storage containers that could provide cover from enemy fire. Morrison followed closely, his years of experience telling him this was their only chance. The first guard rounded the corner just as Rodriguez reached the maintenance door. Time seemed to slow as Morrison watched her raise her silenced pistol and fire a single shot that dropped the man without a sound. The body hit the concrete floor with a soft thud that seemed impossibly loud in the tense silence. "Contact," Rodriguez whispered into her radio. One guard down, maintaining stealth. But Morrison knew their luck couldn't last. Other guards would notice their missing colleague within minutes, and then all hell would break loose. Sergeant Jackson's jamming equipment created static in the facility's communication system, but Morrison could hear guards calling out to each other in increasingly concerned voices. They knew something was wrong, even if they hadn't discovered the body yet. The maintenance tunnel was barely wide enough for one person at a time, and Morrison realized they'd have to move in single file through a space that offered no protection if they were discovered. 2 minutes until disposal activation, Kim reported as they squeezed into the narrow passage. Morrison heard shouts behind them as the guards discovered their missing colleague. Boots thundered through corridors as the search intensified, and he knew they had seconds before their escape route was discovered. "Move, move, move," he whispered urgently, pushing his team through the maintenance tunnel as fast as the cramped space allowed. They emerged from the tunnel at the facility's outer wall, just as Kim's disposal sequence reached its final countdown. 60 seconds until activation, he announced, his voice tight with the stress of their impossible timeline. Morrison could see their extraction point in the distance, but 5 kilometers might as well have been 50 given their circumstances. Automatic weapons fire erupted behind them as guards discovered the maintenance tunnel. Bullets ricocheted off concrete walls as Morrison's team sprinted across open ground toward the tree line. Major Thompson returned fire with precise shots that bought them precious seconds to reach cover. 30 seconds until disposal activation, Kim reported as they crashed through the forest toward their extraction point. Morrison's lungs burned as he ran faster than he'd moved in years, but adrenaline and desperation drove him forward. Behind them, the facility lit up with searchlights as guards poured out of the building. "Overlook base. This is Ranger 6. Vasquez called into her radio while running. "Package delivery complete. Requesting immediate extraction at primary coordinates." Her voice was steady despite their desperate flight through the woods. "Extraction assets are standing by," came the reply. "Fast boat is holding position at the beach. You have 8 minutes to reach pickup point." Morrison calculated the distance and timing in his head, realizing they would make it to the coast with only minutes to spare. Kim's disposal sequence activated just as they reached a hilltop overlooking the industrial facility. Morrison turned to watch as the building erupted in a contained explosion that sent superheated gases venting through specially designed outlets. The chemical weapons were being destroyed in a controlled burn that would eliminate every trace of the deadly compounds. "It's done," Kim said with satisfaction. "Every chemical, biological, and radiological agent in that facility is being neutralized. The threat is eliminated." His words carried the weight of a mission accomplished against impossible odds, but their celebration was premature. Headlights appeared on the road below them as vehicles full of guards began pursuing them through the forest. Morrison heard the distinctive sound of helicopters starting up in the distance, and he realized their escape was far from guaranteed. "They're mobilizing everything they have," Captain Rodriguez observed, checking their pursuers through her scope. "We've got ground vehicles, foot patrols, and air assets, all converging on our position." Her tactical assessment confirmed Morrison's worst fears about their extraction. The team reached the coastline with 3 minutes to spare before their pickup window closed. Morrison could see the fast boat waiting offshore, its crew ready to speed them to safety. But between them and the water stretched 200 meters of open beach that offered no cover from pursuing forces. "Final sprint," Morrison announced, checking his ammunition one last time. "Whatever happens, we reach that boat." His words carried the determination of a leader who refused to accept failure, even when death seemed inevitable. They broke from the tree line and ran across the sand as searchlights from helicopters illuminated the beach around them. Automatic weapons fire erupted from multiple directions as guards closed in for the final confrontation. Morrison felt bullets whipping past his head as he dove for the boat. Vasquez was the last one aboard, providing covering fire as the boat's engines roared to life. Morrison pulled her over the gunwale just as the craft accelerated away from shore, leaving their pursuers stranded on the beach. They had escaped by less than 30 seconds. 6 months later, Morrison sat in his Pentagon office reading intelligence reports about the mysterious explosion that had destroyed a chemical storage facility in Turkey. Official reports blamed the incident on an industrial accident, and no evidence remained to suggest otherwise. The weapons that could have killed millions were nothing but harmless ash. Lieutenant Commander Hayes had been quietly transferred to a desk job after her arrest for espionage. The fake Stormfront operation had successfully exposed the entire spy network, leading to dozens of arrests across multiple countries. Alexander Kozlov was serving a life sentence in a federal prison. A knock on Morrison's door interrupted his reading. Commander Vasquez entered with her characteristic calm confidence. But this time she wore the dress uniform of a fleet commander rather than civilian clothes. "Admiral Morrison," she said formally, though her eyes held the warmth of shared experience. "I wanted to personally thank you for your service on Operation Clean Slate. Your leadership saved countless lives." Morrison stood and saluted his superior officer. But his smile was that of a friend and fellow warrior. "Just doing my job, Commander. Though I have to admit, it was the most interesting mission of my career." Vasquez returned his salute and then extended her hand for a handshake. "There may be other missions in the future, if you're interested. The world is full of threats that require specialized attention." Morrison shook her hand firmly, understanding the unspoken invitation. "I'll be ready when you call, Commander. Some battles are too important to leave to chance." As Vasquez left his office, Morrison returned to his intelligence reports with renewed purpose. Somewhere in the world, other threats were developing that would require the same kind of impossible courage and perfect execution. And when that time came, he would be ready to answer the call once again.